let's just sit down and do it. Just shut up. Let's just do it.
Getting your butt into the chair and your hands on the keys.
They will write on a schedule, no matter whether or not they've got needles sticking in their eyes. They'll just go ahead and sit down and write.
My body, my brain just goes, just write it, it's right here, just write it. What is this outline stuff? Right. You're wasting time. Write the script.
That script almost wrote itself. Like when I think of like the easiest writing experiences, that I think I probably wrote that in 5 weeks of just getting up and like, you know, hammering away at it.
The plumber doesn't have plumber's block, right? They just go to do their job. It's about doing your job, showing up at your job. You have to understand that writing is a job.
I was the editor-in-chief of my college newspaper, and there's a big sign in the newspaper office underneath this huge clock that had a blood red second hand, and the sign said, "This is a daily, not a weekly." And whenever we were there past midnight, the managing editor would put up another sign that would say, "Don't get it right, get it written."
The first question always is, what do you want to accomplish? And the second question is, am I succeeding at that? If you're not succeeding, then you have to change what you're doing if you're committed to reaching the finish line. Most people stay stuck in, the real question is, what is the operational phrase of your life? For many people, the operational phrase of their life is, I'm not getting what I want. Well, if that's the sentence that's ruling your life, you've got to find another sentence. And so it's much more liberating if the sentence is, I'm going to get to the finish line. And I'm going to learn what I need to learn. I'm going to find what I need to find. I'm going to team up with whom I need to team up with. I'm going to create what I need to create. So that's liberating. And so, but also you have to say, let me try something. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. A lot of people are very afraid of failing. And, you know, it's very funny because, you know, Elaine will often talk about, well, you know, if you fell down in real life, would you just stay down? No, you'd get up. You'd continue on, you know. And but a lot of people feel that if they fail, that's the end of it. The doom will ensue, and that's not what happens. And then it's another thing that I've always find very funny is when people say, well, life is like a river, and it'll take you where you're meant to go. And I always say to them, if you fell into a real river, would you have that opinion? And it's like, no, you'd swim like hell to get to the shore. Life is not like a river. Life is basically deciding what you want to accomplish. Life is not, it's very rarely that you're handed something on a plate where it's like, here, this will be easy. Almost everything we try to do is hard. It's difficult. But the more we're willing to say, well, I'm going to get where I'm going, you know, that's what happens.
But it's more than what you want to accomplish. I think that there's a very poisonous thing that we get taught from the time that we're very small, which is that it's enough to not be happy. You know, we don't think that if you're not happy that it's enough. That happiness is something that we deserve, that we all deserve. And to say that, well, I'm leading an okay life, I don't think that's okay. He doesn't think that's okay. It's like, no, if you're not feeling happy, if you're not feeling like you're doing your best, I really believe that all of us were born with gifts that belong to the world. And if we're too afraid to deliver them, well, that's just a loss. That's just sad. And I think a lot of that is linked to actually enthusiasm and feeling happy and giving that original piece that we're all born with.
The talent has to understand, even if it's not about how many hours a day they invest on the business side of their life. It's deeper than that. It's an understanding that I'm going to will this into being. I'm going to will people into my life who are going to help me. I'm going to will new relationships into my life. I'm going to take action that pays dividends. It's not okay to sit home and complain. You know, the glass isn't half empty, ever, 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 ever. You know, we're all allowed our moment. We're all allowed to have that one day, or that preferably that 1 hour, right? Then you have to dust yourself off and say, success is about moving on with it. And if other people aren't getting it done for you, then you've got to motivate them. And the best way to motivate someone is to show them what they're not doing by doing it yourself.
I think we've spent our life watching, and that we should continue to do so. But that's not really homework. It's just what we do and what we love. And now we don't have to feel guilty about it. You know? Great. Woo! Okay. Terrific. So you're doing that anyway. As far as networking goes, It is the question of keeping your eyes open, shaking hands, making friends, capitalizing on relationships. That's all. So that can also happen at the same time. This is all sort of multi-platform stuff that you're doing anyway. So when it comes to the real time spent for writing, right. You know, you can't really count any of those things as, well, I was writing because I was watching TV and I was making a friend. You got to write.
The biggest lesson about writing is get up and do it. You know, is like, it is a job. You know, I'm the kind of guy that I like a glass of wine, you know, I like some music going. That's very romantic, and I'm sure Hemingway would be very proud, but like that's really not how you get a script done or how you write that many scripts, and I am always writing. So it's like you got to get up, you got to spend time with your coffee, you got to look at it, and sometimes it's just sitting there, not being able to write anything that gets you 2 days later to where you are, where you can, you know, answer the question and put it on paper.
I know a lot of writers, and these I'll put in quotation marks, who talk about writing all the time, who talk about what they want to write and how much they want to be a writer and how much they want to be in a room and how much, but never make time for the writing itself. So to me, those are the writers that will usually bring me to the conversation of, do you really want to write? Because you're talking about it all the time, but you're not actually doing it. And if you are a writer who is not writing, then what are you in terms of this career? You have to have the discipline, you have to have the desire, you have to have the drive, and you have to be willing to make the sacrifices that most writers do that it takes in order to become a writer. And that means waking up in the morning early if you have a day job, or writing on the weekends, or writing after hours rather than running around partying with your friends. There's a lot of, for most writers are not independently wealthy, right? They're not going to be able to sit around all day and take 4 hours a day to write and then go party and then go run around and then go travel the world. So most writers are going to find themselves in a situation where they have to have a day job. Potentially they have a family, they have a partner, they have friends, they have relationships they want to maintain. And so writing is going to demand some level of sacrifice. I had a writer that I'd worked with for a number of years who we would meet every 3 or 4 months. And every 3 or 4 months she would sit down and tell me the list of excuses for why she didn't write the previous 3 or 4 months. So the job was too hard, and she had to work out because she wasn't healthy, and she wasn't sleeping well, and she had to move apartments, and she was fostering dogs. And there was always something. And I truly believe that she believed she wanted to be a writer. But at the end of the day, if you're not engaging in the thing, right, whether it's writing or playing piano or any one of the things, you cannot claim the thing as your own. You have to engage in it in some consistency. And, you know, similarly, I meet writers who wrote a screenplay 10 years ago and haven't touched it since. But they're a writer. But you have to actively engage in the thing if you want to be taken seriously as an owner of the thing.
An old friend of mine who was the dean of our School of Management years ago said something to me. It was one of those statements that you first hear it and you say, that's kind of corny, and then you think about it and say, wow, that's really deep. He said, successful people are people who know how to work when it's hard. And, you know, if I said, hey, why don't you guys come over this weekend, we'll paint the room. I'll get you all a pizza and beer. That's like grungy, awful work, but it's not hard. You just do this a lot. But when you're working on a math problem and you can't solve it, and it makes your head hurt and you want to give up, or you can't figure out how to fix Act 2, and you just say, oh, the hell with it. Successful people are people who will hang in and solve it as long as it takes. And it's a rare quality in people to do something when they feel like maybe it's not going to succeed, it probably won't, it's really difficult, it's making my head hurt, and still be able to stick to it under those conditions.
I couldn't improve that if I tried. That was great. How about one for me, just for the hell of it? Something simple.
I got this rejection. I know that I will never be the person I want to be. There's usually a direct connection about what rejection means about the person, not about the script or the person reading the script. I'm not going to make it as a writer. I will never be happy. I will never be fulfilled. I'm just a loser. I didn't make it in this contest. I can't tell you the rhyme or reason of screenwriting contests. I've been in this industry forever and I still don't understand them. And I have writers saying, oh, I didn't make the quarterfinals in the Nickel, I'm a loser. I know that I'm a loser now, I'm a bad writer. Hold on, there's gonna be lots more rejections. There's gonna be lots more opportunities to be a loser. Don't jump at the chance so quickly. But for a lot of writers, it's very real. And don't get me wrong, every writer has a moment or 15 of being self-defeatist. You know, I have one writer who's a working writer who always says that if you're not thinking about quitting at least twice a week, you're doing something wrong. And I believe him. I think it's very, very true. I think every writer thinks they're failing at a moment. Every writer thinks that they're not good enough. Every writer thinks that they're never going to be able to recreate the past success that they've had. I think that's perfectly part of the deal. But seeing everything as a failure, as an indication that you are just a loser, or you are just a bad writer, or you are just a bad person, that is what I see in the more defeated writers. And the problem is that nobody wants to work with that. Nobody wants to be in a room with that. Nobody wants to pick up your script as a validation to who you are as a human being. They want to pick up your script because it's a great script. And they want to bring you into the room because they think you have something to contribute. Not because they think that you need the room.
I kind of know an ending, but that can all change. But people get very scared of the middle, but for me, that's when it gets fun because it's so challenging. And you so get to what, you know, in a screenplay, if you think of a screenplay as 110, 120 pages, you get to page 60 and you go, oh my God, I'm only halfway there. What happens next? But something will happen. And that's exhilarating, and it's exhilarating to go to bed completely sure that you will never figure out what's going to happen next and wake up with the answer. And that and it's, you know, it's a daily challenge, but it feels so good to realize that next scene will be there if you keep working at it. It's the best feeling in the world, other than finishing. And then finishing, it's like the first draft, no matter what shape it's in, it's like brilliant. I mean, that's just, I always get tears in my eyes when I finish a first draft because I feel like I'm saying goodbye to a group of people that I've been on this journey with. And there's a very emotional side to it. And then, you know, then you become the craftsman and time for a second draft and all of that. But it's an emotional journey, and to do that day after day, it's incredibly rewarding. I've got the best job in the world.
Now you're having a bad day. This is not one of the worst days of your life. And because of that, you're going to keep going. And that's the truth of the matter. We're all going to have bad days here, and I'm here to support my writers through them. But it's about understanding when there are some bad days and when it's all bad days.
It's very easy to have an initial enthusiasm for a creative project, but it's very hard when things start to become difficult, when you have to be there for the long haul. And it's also particularly difficult because you don't know if you're going to succeed. So often you're in the darkness, and that's where you need to surround yourself with other people who have faith when you falter. Years ago, when I graduated from UCLA as an art major, by the time I got out of UCLA, I knew I wanted to be a writer rather than a visual artist, even though I'd had art, gallery shows of my work, my paintings and my photography when I was a teenager. I knew I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer, producer in TV, and there were no classes in how to do that. So I decided I would write a book about the Twilight Zone TV show to learn how to do that job. So I started writing the Twilight Zone Companion, and we started submitting it as a project to publishers. And for a 2-year period, it was rejected. It was rejected by 25 publishers. And had it just been me, I would have given up. But Elaine said, keep going, keep going. And we figured out why it wasn't selling. We fired the agent we had, who had been Rod Serling's literary agent, and we got another agent. She submitted it back to one of the publishers who had rejected it, to a different editor, and the book sold. And the book was an instant bestseller when it came out. It sold over 500,000 copies. It's still in print all these years later. But if I hadn't had Elaine in my life, who believed in me even when I faltered, the book, I wouldn't have finished the book. Someone else would have come out with a book on the Twilight Zone, and I would have just spent the rest of my life in bars being bitter. You know, so again,
which would have been odd because he doesn't drink.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah, really, I would have just been eating those peanuts and drinking like diet soda or something. It would have been a really wasted life. But again, it's very important to surround yourself with people who love you and people who believe in you. And it's a two-way street. So Elaine will falter and have dark days, and I'll say, no, let's keep on this path. So it's a two-way street, and that's really important.
That cliche about working every day, whether you are inspired or not, is so important, and I see it in professional writers all the time. Even if they literally are in agony as they type and go, this is shit, this is crap, this is crap, you never know what the gold is going to be from that writing. Whereas if you don't write it down, if you go, you know what, today is just too tough, it's too hard, I have no inspiration, I'm not going to write, because I know when I write this is crap, those people fail almost all the time because they don't ever write on a disciplined schedule. So they don't have crap that they can go back in and go, oh look, here's a gold nugget. Oh, here's another gold nugget. I guarantee you if you write 5 pages of what you think is utter crap, that within that you'll find a paragraph, if you give yourself enough time, that'll literally propel you another chapter or two or another scene or two. And that's sort of the secret of a professional writer that really distinguishes him from an amateur writer, is that they will write on a schedule no matter whether or not they've got needles sticking in their eyes. They'll just go ahead and sit down and write.
I would just say working in, studio system for 10 years or whatever toughens you up to the point where you have to be prepared for all sorts of scenarios, often especially as a writer, rejection. So at this point, it's still on your mind, and you're still hoping. And I feel like we thought we were making something, really interesting and great. And so I was probably a little bit confident in my better moments, and I'm sure I had some darker moments late at night.
Sure.
But everybody was so enthused, and having such a great cast, having a guy like Reese behind the camera, definitely instilled a confidence in us that sometimes is hard to come by in this business because you get knocked down so much, and things just usually don't turn out as you planned as much as you try to harness control of your work. It can go sideways at any moment.
I had a friend who was an aspiring writer, and he had final draft. So I went to him and I said, hey man, I want to write a script. And he was like, you want what? I said, just give me the final draft, show me how it works. He's like, that's not how final draft works. I was like, dude, whatever, just just show me how it works. So he taught me how it works. He's like, you just do that and hit the tab and then write the thing. I was like, all right. So what are you gonna write? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to write a script. I'm gonna write a script.
Well, you didn't have an idea.
Not
it was
at the
like
time.
Floating around now.
Nah, I was like, I'm just gonna write one. I've been reading them all my life. Can't be that hard.
Right.
Hard, but I just figured, just write a script. Just start. Like, what am I doing? I'm sitting here, I'm staring at a phone that doesn't ring, Phone's not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. I could be sitting here a year from now, and me and my phone can be hanging out together, or I could be sitting here a year from now, and me and my phone could be hanging out with a script that I wrote. So I started writing.
Every time I walk into the class, the first evening, all our classes are evening classes. And in the new class, the first year people there for the first semester, and I walk in and they're chattering away and trying to get to know each other and so forth, but they haven't really had anything to do with me yet. And I walk in, it was always weird and creepy because as soon as I walk in, deathly silence falls. Everybody's waiting, So I look very austere and serious, and I walk to the whiteboard and I write on the whiteboard in very, very large letters, write badly with pride. And then they laugh. Everybody laughs, and it cuts the ice, and it works that way. And I turn around and I smile and I say, yes, but I'm not kidding. For it is a critical importance for writers to permanently give themselves permission to write badly. If, writer's block is all about expecting and demanding of oneself perfection. Anything, any word, any sentence, it's got to be great. It's got to be great. No, that way lies writerly death. You do that, you'll end up freezing so solid, you'll never write again. It is exactly the opposite. Writing is a craft. It's a craft, and how do you participate in a craft? It's a craft that's exercised with words, and it is like in I don't know, statuary or something. You start out with a big gooey pile of wet clay, and you start to mush it. You get your hands dirty, you know. You get down in the mud and you mush it and squish it, and then you start making choices about, as you shape it, the pieces you're not going to need, and so forth, and you go from there. But you start out with mess. That's what we do as writers. We start with mess, and then we make choices. First hundreds of choices, and then thousands of choices, and before we're done, tens of thousands of individual choices have been made. But you cannot make choices, and you cannot see what or choose what direction you want your story to go in, or how you want it to develop, unless you have a pile of words on the page. So we have exercises sometimes. Just let's try it. Let's write as badly as we know how. And it's funny, you read them aloud, everybody gets a laugh, and kind of stuff. And what they find out is, even when they are trying to write badly, because that's what we're doing, it's this little exercise, it still comes out funny. It's not bad, in other words. They're funny, they're cute, they're weird, they're quippy. But even writing badly, they're not really writing that badly at all.
I know writers, directors who put themselves on that pedestal because they've had this degree of success and they feel that they have to come in and be very buttoned down and very above the people that they're talking to or talking down to. I don't look at it like that at all. I will tell you about my bad night, my hangover, my whatever. And part of it, again, it's like free therapy, but part of it is also, this is my life, sometimes it's not terribly respectable, but I'm responsible because I will get my ass to my computer and write. And don't worry about being perfect. But that is that I wish I could say that my success rate was 100% with that. But again, most people will never finish their scripts because that sense of needing to be perfect, oh, I'm being boring, oh, this isn't working, it will take over and it will crush their creativity. And it's a very sad thing to witness. I try to get people over it. I try to say, look, it's a first draft. I try, don't worry so much. But that is the toughest job any person who's teaching any kind of creativity has, is to convince people to get out of their own way. And my way of doing it, again, is to say, today, students, I am a hot mess. But
those are the best classes.
But I wrote for 4 hours.
And then they feel okay that they're also imperfect, but whatever sort of front we all have our public image that we put out there. I think that's great because
or if it's really good, well, they feel superior to me.
Whatever works, yeah. Let them be on that.
But again, it's some of it's just the nature of my personality, but some of it's very deliberate. It just don't, I've knocked wicker. I've made a living at this for 30 years. I mean, it's insane. Sometimes great, sometimes just skating by, sometimes whatever. But it hasn't come out of being perfect, believe me. But it's coming out of having enough discipline to write.
Screenwriting is quite oftentimes very challenging and very difficult on a daily basis. So you have these waves of these peaks of megalomania where you write 20 pages in a day and you think you're an incredible writer and you think you're unstoppable. And then you have these other days where, or weeks where you don't write a word, or you don't write a page, or you don't get anything done. And you really reach these valleys of self-loathing. So I don't feel like there's really an in-between. There's no real middle ground. I think you are mainly in the trenches. Most of the time you are dealing with self-doubt, in my opinion, as a writer, and dealing with the hardships that come along with trying to create, whether it's a feature film or a novel or a television pilot or project. So I think, sure, maybe some writers out there are optimistic about their ideas and what the story that they want to tell, but I think the overall psychology and mentality of a writer, from my opinion, and from my experience, is that of someone who is constantly dealing with challenges on a daily basis. And so for me, I don't know that I would say I'm optimistic. I'm very excited about what I'm writing most of the time. But that's on the surface of things. I think when you dig deeper, you know, we are self-loathing individuals. You know, we have issues with self-deprecation, and I think for me, that's usually where I'm at.
When you're in my class, you know, I'm always like, leave the drama on the page. You know, I don't want to hear about it. Let's get writing. You know, that's sort of how I work. And I always feel like sort of the writing pushes through the issues, or you can take those issues and give them to a character. This can be really cathartic for you. But as far as people being attracted to failure, maybe one kind of writer is. I don't know if all writers are. I think some people are just attracted to storytelling.
It begins with the excitement of an idea. You know, Vince Gilligan said, you know, when he started Breaking Bad, it was just the idea. He was sitting around with a friend of his, and they were bemoaning the fact that they weren't working. And he just goes, man, you know, maybe we should cook meth. And his friend laughed, ha, ha, ha. And then from that, he had the idea, wow, cooking meth, what would that be like? So the whole story came from this little nugget, this little excitement. And I see that all the time with writers, is whatever excites you is the place to start in your story. One deadly thing to do is to go, okay, well, what's selling? Let me go to the Hollywood Reporter and see what's selling right now. Okay, well, horror's not selling, action's selling. All right, I'll write an action movie. That is almost guaranteed to leave you uninspired.
Beetlejuice, for instance, the idea was that I discussed with my partners, a psychedelic ghost comedy. We had no idea what that meant, but it rolled off the tongue, right? And I usually have something of an idea like that, and I kind of know the beginning, and I kind of know the end. The middle is the great unknown. But it's an instinct and an idea, and sometimes it's a character, and sometimes it's a situation. But it's very internal at first. And yes, there's times where you write on assignment, you know, and you're given an idea and say, translate this into a movie. But in terms of my own writing, if you will, my personal writing, it usually comes from just the most basic kind of idea and a feeling, you know, and it's like, and I can't articulate it very well. I'm sorry, because it's hard to articulate, but it's just kind of like like a situation or a character that's just kind of waiting to come out. And then whatever your process is, and boy do you need a process, and boy do you need to go to work, and boy do you need to sit down and do it. and do the job of writing, and you allow that character or that situation to just start growing and start coming, you know, leaving your fingers onto the digital page these days, you know, onto your computer, and then it grows and expands and it takes on life. And you know, there's, of course, and this is every writer's choice. There's a lot of talk about backstory, always, you know, like tell it, you know, where did your character go to school? How, you know, what was his or her mommy like, and all of that. I've never written a backstory in my life, never. But if you ask me to tell me the backstory of one of my characters, I could. I'd kind of be making it up as I went along, but the feelings would be true, because I feel I feel the characters, and I feel like they need to come out, and I feel like they need to be given a voice, and that's just that's what writing is to me. An idea or a character or a situation or an emotion or a feeling that you somehow have to put into the world. And it's hard to articulate, and I feel like I'm talking in circles, but it's almost hard not to, because it's so ephemeral in the beginning.
The same thing that happened with Carol has happened with all subsequent projects. I read the novel obsessively, maybe 4, 5, 6 times, just quickly. Make a bunch of notes that I then never ever refer to ever again. I just write things down. It's a bit like rote memorization, maybe, that you take this stuff in, maybe by osmosis, and then I go away and I do something else. I'll go to a bunch of baseball games, or I'll, you know, watch TV, or I'll go to Vegas, something, for a few weeks. And then I come back, and if I've got, say, 10 weeks to do something, I'll use 8 of them in other ways. I won't even think about it. And then I'll sit down and I'll write from page 1 to the end, very quickly. And without stopping, without revising, and without shuffling scenes around. There's something about a structure, for me, arriving at how something begins and ends, provides a structural tool. And that's really the way music mostly is composed. So I look at it that way. And then the revision is always the same. If something is wrong on page 46, you know, the previous 45 pages also have to be adjusted, and all the pages that follow. Because one thing is off, it sets something off in another section. I've never been someone who's learned how to do that thing that I always see with famous screenwriters, you know, the cards, the ability to take one scene here and put it here, and it always seems that's not my process. It's got to all work as a piece in one long act almost.
I think that Alex probably is more like, let's just sit down and do it, just shut up, let's just do it. And I like to, you know, really challenge every idea and make sure we're, you know, taking the right path. But it's a great mix, because it sort of keeps each other on our toes. You know, I think that one would more just like to right away, and the other maybe let's just think about it for a second, and it's a good push-pull. Probably spend about 90% of the time writing in the same room. We feel like it keeps us moving ahead, and also we talk through everything first, so we never really sit down without knowing what's the other one's doing, and then we'll either break stuff up, or one of us will take the first stab, and then the other will come in and just start rewriting it right away. We generally like to write what we call a vomit draft, just to try to get something out on paper, right away, and that can sometimes be very close to what ends up, and sometimes it can be entirely different. But it's important to just start getting your thoughts out on paper. Yeah, we pretty much split up a lot of the duties.
And sometimes you just find this little germ of an idea, you know, and it can just be, you know, a single thought or a little, you know, some little thing, you know, or a person or whatever, and one little thing, and then it starts to just like pool things together, you know, you start to see the resonances of different things. I really love that approach to writing a screenplay, you know, that it's an act of curiosity and discovery. I feel like when you write a screenplay, it's like being an archaeologist. You're excavating something that already exists somehow. And I think that sort of organic path for me is definitely the way that bears the most fruit. When I try to be clever or try to do it in a more strategic way, I think the results are less interesting. I mean, I do have a thing when I'm writing a first draft where I generally say I write 4 to 5 pages a day. Once I start to write the script, you know, like I'll let myself have months of just like pulling things together. He'll know, and I'm always buying books that are connected to whatever it is, and watching films, you know, just filling up all the well in a sense. And then I reach a certain point where I'm like, I'm ready to write the script, you know? And then I'm totally strict about just, you know, I'll set myself like 4 pages a day or 5 pages a day, and that is it. Like, there's no excuse. You know, if it takes you all day, it takes all day. If it takes an hour, it takes an hour, but that's the minimum you're gonna write every day. And I get the script done that way. And, you know, I think like when you're in that process, like somewhere, usually before you actually start writing a script, you just know, like, it's just, if it's not that interesting to you, the resonances aren't there, if you're having to force it, you know, at this stage, then I feel like abandon it, jump ship, you know, because at that stage of gestation and leading up to writing your first draft, if it's not holding you, then it's not gonna hold you, you know, and maybe it will come to you later. You know, I have had that experience, and I think actually my second film was a little like that, because I think I'd had the idea, I've had it for years percolating, you know, the idea of a yoga teacher and a sex worker, and this relationship between them, you know, and so it was something, but I couldn't really find it, I couldn't really crack it before, and then suddenly it was like, oh yeah, I get it, they're sisters, you know, and different things, you know, came into that. So, you know, I think sometimes if you do have a good idea, but it's not quite working out, and you're having to force it, and you're pushing through it, you know, sometimes the best thing is just to leave it, set it aside, work on something else. And then maybe it's a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you come back to it and you go, now I know what that needs, you know, and it can go again.
Gosh, this is going to sound terrible. There are things you're supposed to do as a writer that you should do. You should make an outline, you should make your character breakdowns. There's all these things that you like do. You make your cards and you plot out your story, your first and second and third. I don't do any of that. Do none of it.
That's the perfect screenwriter.
Yes.
That's one that has the folded sock drawer.
Yes, that's the guy who does it all correctly. I don't do any of that. I like to sit and think about the idea, and then I like to think about the character, who that woman or man is, and what they're like, and what their world looks like. And then I just start to think about what the movie might look like in my head. And once I sort of start seeing the movie itself in my head, then I start writing it. I don't know how it's going to end necessarily, unless it's a thriller. If it's a thriller, I need to know how it's going to end so I can know where I got to go, if that makes sense. You know, because you always want to have that ending that people go, oh. So you think of the ending first. Like, what would be a cool, oh. And then, oh, okay, now how do I get there? So I go backward if it's a thriller. If it's not a thriller, if it's just a story about people and life and love or whatever it is, then I don't really think that much about what's going to happen. I just sort of think about the people and where they are and where I want them to be, what the world's like, what they enjoy. There's usually a lot of wine involved because I enjoy some wine. What happens is I end up writing something that's more organic and spontaneous because I haven't sort of telegraphed it. And kind of like when you're acting, you know, you always hear, don't play result, you know, because you've read the entire script. So your character is on a journey. So you know what that journey is, but the character doesn't know. So you don't want to play like you know what's coming because you'll telegraph it to the audience. I find the same thing works for me as a writer. By not knowing everything when I'm writing, I'm discovering it as I'm writing, and it makes the writing process exciting for me, because I'm like sitting there at the keyboard. I'm like, this is great. You know, people are like, well, what's going to happen next? Like, I don't know. I can't wait to find out either. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a spontaneous thing. And then hopefully the training and the laws of inevitability that I try to keep focused in my head, you know, kick in as I'm writing. And when it's done, it's a really great story. But yeah, I like to look at it as a living, breathing story that's unfolding as if I'm watching it. And that drives me toward the end. Because I feel like if I do all the outline stuff, for me, if I do all the outline stuff, I've already kind of done it already. So now it's like, oh, now I gotta write it all. I already figured it out. So I just like to jump in and start writing.
And when I'm inspired, literally, it just all comes out. So like even my first screenplay, I thought about it for 2 or 3 months, and then literally I wrote it in like 3 weeks. So when that happens, when I'm inspired like that, and I've been literally thinking about a project and sort of letting it marinate, it just all comes out. So I say everybody has a different process, but I would probably have a lot more product if I just committed to write something every day. It could be a poem, it could be anything. I think that's just really wonderful to do, but I have so many different interests that writing is one of them.
I come up with an idea, I get excited about it, and I tend to write it very quickly. I used to do outlines. I don't do outlines anymore because, unless it's very complicated, because I'll start writing the outline and I think in so much detail off in the beginning that I'm often trying to write it fast enough before I forget what I'm thinking. So if I start writing an outline, by page 2, it's becoming scenes anyway. Like I keep, like it's like scene 1, I'm going to write one word. I'm just going to write one sentence for each scene, and scene 1 is this, and scene 2 is this, and scene 3 is this, and scene 4 is this, and now I'm writing scenes. So I just start writing the script, and I try to write very quickly the first draft. I try to write 10 pages a day, trying to think about it too much, just puke it out, just blah. I also don't often write in order, so I try to write where I'm excited to write. I'm excited to write this scene, I'm going to just plow through that, and then write this, and then write this, and I kind of already know how it's all going to go together. And when I'm done, I have a first draft within less than 2 weeks. Then I step away from it for a couple of weeks and go back and look at it.
Really, if I'm honest, I'm always figuring it out as I write. Even if I go in thinking that I know what it is, I'm still going to end up figuring it out as I go. Yeah. I have inside out writing and outside in writing. And the outside in will tend to be something where there's kind of an external story, and then so you've got the container a little bit, and then you're figuring out all of the ways that you're furnishing and arranging what's in that container and generating some new stuff. And then when occasionally I have the luxury of doing kind of what I call the inside out, where you have almost nothing. You have you woke up in the middle of the night with like an image in your head, or you just kind of this very fragmentary thing, like a grain of sand, and then it's like you're making narrative stone soup. You're like, here's the pebble, and then do you know the story of stone soup? They go around, they get the meat and the carrots and everything, and then it's more like, it's like found art, like just pulling all of the things from your life, your memories and what's going on, and you're kind of building it out from this little thing, and it becomes something where you really didn't have much of an idea what it was going to be at all. And so that's pretty fun. And that would, again, of course, be an example of figuring it out as you go.
It's just throwing ideas around at first. And Chris Bergosh, who co-wrote Starlet and Tangerine, he's wonderful at note-taking. So he's there typing away, just compiling every note possible, into something. I don't know, even know what he's typing, what, you know, simple text or something. He's just compiling all these notes. So the first day is really just us brainstorming, spitballing ideas. There's a point where there are enough notes down on page and you understand your story enough where it's time to start writing those pages. So I might write a page, he'll write a page, we'll start sharing them. I know that we used, for both films, I think we used Google Drive, and we were sharing a lot that way. You know, we also go about it where we eventually get to a point where we have the Post-its on the wall. And that's when you actually can get a film or your idea or your script up on the wall and like with hundreds of Post-its, and it makes sense from beginning to end. I think that's when we decide to start assigning each other pages and scenes. So we'll say, okay, look at that scene. I think I got a handle on that scene. I'll take that. Can you take that one? Because I don't have a handle on that one. And then we share them, and then we start to compile this thing. And that's how that's done. I focus more on the last scene and the impact the last scene will have. That's almost one of the first things I think about. The endings are very important to me because it's about how the audience leaves the theaters. You know, I think very much so about the impact of that last scene. If you think, I look at my favorite films, and my favorite films are like Harold and Maude, and when he's walking away at the end after, you know, the car goes over the cliff and you think he might be in it, but then he's up on the cliff and he's with his banjo. You have, you know, most of my favorite films have such incredibly memorable lasting scenes that have an impact on the audience as they're sitting there during the final credits. And I think that that's something I'm always conscious of. It's the most important thing for me in a screenplay.
The process of just starting to write is so challenging that I often come up with the title first. It's so backwards. Like, I don't know any screenwriter who, they're like literally I've written a whole screenplay from a title that inspired me. There was a title called The Big Empty. A friend of mine had a song called The Big Empty, and I was like, that's a great title for a script, The Big Empty. So I literally wrote The Big Empty and thought, okay, what's it gonna be about? And then I came up with the whole script for what this was gonna be about. So I think it's just getting started. I'm not someone who does, even though my very first successful screenplay was almost like doing an outline, it was like a stream of consciousness treatment that I wrote. And then I realized after writing like 20 or 30 pages, you should just write the script. It's right here, you should just write the script. But that's because I had been marinating on it for so long. I could just do that. But when it comes to outlines, which is a process that a lot of script writers do, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. I really admire people who really know how to outline and write their scripts from there. Things are just a little bit more organic for me. But I can write like a beginning, a middle, and an end, but it's usually about 2 or 3 pages of stuff and a character breakdown.
So we're all a bunch of humans running around, right? And on some level, we're all pretty much the same, right? Biologically, whatever. However, what really separates us is our experiences and our perspectives, because everyone, although similar, you know, American culture is similar, let's say, or growing up in a city or growing up in the suburbs or, you know, these kinds of things. What you've experienced through your life and what you're interested in and what you're educated in and things like that, that is what really gives you your voice, right? So if you can tap in to what matters to you and understand why it matters to you, then you can write with power, not only from your head and your imagination, but from your heart. If what you're writing doesn't matter to you, it's going to be flat. It's never really going to emote. But if you can tap in and understand what your gifts are, what your perspective is, what you believe, then you can create characters and stories based around that, fictionalize it, you know, embellish it or whatever, however you do it, dramatize it, and then create within a narrative structure. as a screenplay. And that is where great screenplays come from.
First, you should appreciate the value of daydreaming. Daydreaming without a purpose is, and imagining other worlds actually does scientifically stimulate your brain and relax you. Physical exercise, always important. Taking a walk around the building, getting your body moving, getting your endorphins moving. Some people actually need really heavy endorphin push to get out of that hamster brain and into a meditative space. For a lot of people, meditation is really hard because you let your worried mind take over. So finding a simple exercise like literally saying to yourself, in, breath, out, breath, and allowing just your own voice of in, out can calm you down. But the other thing is belief. When you believe that you have to get somewhere or you have to achieve something, it's much harder to get there. If you believe that who you are right now, what you're writing right now, is actually destined to come in the world, and you can just relax and let it come, and the thing that you're going to write next is the perfect sentence, and the next word is the perfect sentence. And even if you're just writing, I don't know what I'm writing, I don't know what I'm writing, I'm waiting for something inspiring to come to me, I'll just wait and keep typing, and then you start enjoying the feeling of typing, start enjoying the feeling of your fingers, start enjoying a great word, pick a surprising word, and I promise you, eventually, if you just keep typing, that next idea will come, and the next idea will come, and if you don't judge it, and you allow the next thing to come, there will be a progression that will take you forward.
But I love working on all different genres. Like that's what's always fun to me is getting hired to do, like a punch up on a kid's movie, or here's a horror film, or, here's a family drama. But like, I love getting to do all of them because I love movies. And it gets boring doing the same thing over and over again. So as far as like what taught me the most, I think it's just being thrown the random, here, I need you to do this suspense action film for me. And like sometimes you'll get a finished script and you'll fix it. Sometimes you'll get a paragraph and you'll execute it, It's like, so I don't know, all of them, I guess. It's just the process of writing, you just get better at it. And like, that's something I tell young people all the time is like, you get better at writing the more you write. So you have to write, you know what I mean? All the time.
We definitely live in a culture, especially in the screenwriting world, where you're supposed to read as many scripts as you can to learn how to write, right? Read. But I believe strongly in bubbles. I believe you should put a big, magic, thick, plexi, silent bubble around you when you write. So that, and the other thing you put in your bubble is everything that you love. If you love, bubble gum and butterflies and unicorns, or if you love, 60s music or whatever it is, you have to surround yourself with the essence of you, and be careful of criticism. I'm a strong believer in not allowing any of the babies that you're writing to ever see the light of day. I've seen so many babies who've just been born as little scripts be told that they will never go to college and never grow up to be beautiful because someone didn't get them. And you think about projects now like Transcendence and, you think of projects like Transparent and Quirky Stories, Orange is the New Black, or where they're deeply personal and they would never they'd never live if the wrong person saw that story. And so be careful, and be careful of allowing criticism, be careful of allowing other voices,
Surround yourself with the bubble that is authentically you, so you feel yourself, you taste yourself, you smell yourself, and you love that bubble. And what comes out of that will be so much more unique. And in this world of storytelling, uniqueness, authenticity, originality is what it breaks through. And so that's what you want. You want to take a big bath in you.
It's not that cliche, write what you know, because I've never written what I quote unquote know. I write fantastical worlds and supernatural stories and all of that. But write what you feel and write what's in your heart and write something that means something to you. And you know, I was a script reader for, God, probably a decade, and I was reading 7, 8 scripts a week, and the rare one was the great script. And when you found that, that was a very exciting day at the office. And sometimes the really terrible scripts were they were fun because they were so god-awful. But the ones that got really exhausting and really enervating as a script reader who's sitting there and has to read a script, synopsize it, write a comment about it, then pick up another one and read it, and were the ones that you could tell were written by people who were looking at what last year's hit was and trying to imitate it. And those were deadly, and they weren't good, they weren't bad, they were safe and mediocre. And any writer, any young writer, any old writer, anyone who's just starting to write anything, write something that you feel, write something that comes from the heart. And people may not think that Beetlejuice is a personal movie. It's an intensely personal movie. It was intensely personal for Michael and me. And you know, I didn't know I had a theme until I had enough work to realize I had a theme. And almost everything I've written are about broken families who are put back together in some bizarre way. But because I came from a broken family, I like to think that my work has a sense of heart and a sense of compassion and a sense of humanity in it, no matter how bizarre it is, no matter how weird the worlds get. And you got to write something that you feel and something that you have some passion for, or just why do it? It's too hard. It's just it's not an easy job, and I personally can't imagine saying, well, this was a hit. Now, so I'm gonna write my version of that. It's not really what I care about, what I feel, but I can imitate it well enough. I can't imagine spending a year of your life doing that, but people do it all the time. And they usually write mediocre scripts.
I think people chase trends. You know, oh, I don't know, romantic comedies are big this year. Let's write romantic comedies. Okay, like, is that really coming from what you're passionate about? Maybe, but maybe not. Often, I also think screenwriters don't dig in deep enough to really understand where they're coming from, the pain and the triumph that drives these stories. So continually digging deeper, asking yourself, why are you doing this? Why do you care about these characters? So by digging into these kinds of questions, these kinds of truths, these kinds of subjects, a screenwriter can get a lot deeper into what they believe and then express it. But I guess I'm just suggesting that as you're considering what to write, these kinds of questions can really inform and activate and engage your stories and your characters. If they matter to you, they will matter to somebody else. And if they don't, they just won't.
As a screenwriter, I often see this kind of advice to screenwriters which goes something like, you know, read the trades. and and see what's selling, and and then write something like that and study other screenplays. And I think, good God, I mean, I think reading a lot of books is very important. I think watching tons of movies is super important. Reading some screenplays so you understand the format and the craft, but then like allowing yourself the space to really go off the reservation, and just allowing it to form in its own way. Because the first draft is really, I mean, it's just the start of a very long journey. You're going to rewrite your script at least 20 times before you shoot. I've never heard of anyone that does less than probably 20 drafts from a first script to a shooting script, And if they do, I'd love to meet them. But I think most people, it's a process, and your first draft, you just want to make yourself as free as you can and as honest as you can and as curious as you can, and let things unfold. And I think that gives you the best chance of writing something that's going to be, engaging and unique.
We all want to be successful. And one of the ways we find success is to look at other people and say, oh, I like the way she looks, so I'm going to look like her. Or I like the way he writes, so I'm going to write like her. And you hear all these stories of like even Joan Didion, who copied Ernest Hemingway in order to find her voice. But what you want to do, but you're on the wrong track if you start feeling that anxiety that I could never be like her, that when I compare myself to his writing, I'm just really not, and you start feeling that sense of not good enough, not meeting something, and you start wanting to be seen. You can feel that pull of wanting to be seen like your idol, right? And that's the moment where, if you were talking about a physical look, you'd go get plastic surgery, right? So I could put her nose on my face, so I can put his words in my script or my story. And so when you start feeling that, you have to recognize that you're walking away from yourself. You're walking away from yourself and trying to sit in somebody else's image. And if you do that, you will always be a shadow of someone else. The truth of who you are, the reason that you came to write, won't come out. It won't flourish. It's kind of like you'll be that plant that just doesn't get enough water and doesn't get enough sun. So it might bloom, but the flower will be small and the fruit will be bitter, right? And if you're really going to anchor in yourself, you have to believe that you are as brilliant as the person you want to be. And so you're going to appreciate how they shine, but you're not going to copy how they shine. You want to appreciate how strong they are in their voice, and you want to practice your own voice as loudly as you can. Now the awkward thing is, you're going to practice that voice, and it's not going to be good, right? We're never good when we start playing the piano. We're never great when we start driving. We crash into things, right? It takes practice, but you have to hang on to the belief. So this is the disconnect. You have to know that even though you may not look good at what you're doing is not accomplishing the vision of what you want to accomplish ultimately. You have to believe that you're going to get there, just as you are. So it's hanging on to the tension of being not so good, an amateur, awkward, but believing that you're going to grow into something that will flourish and bloom, and you're going to have patience. And that's the most difficult thing, because when you're struggling and you want success and you know you're good, but it's not coming, there's a tendency to say, well, I'm on the wrong path. The universe doesn't want me to do this. I should go to that path. I should follow that path. Anchor in. This is where meditation becomes really important, and really knowing that there are stories inside of you that need to be told just the way you want to tell them, and having the patience to wait for them to bloom so that the timing is right, and that your timing is right as an artist and that timing is right in the marketplace.
You have to write on a schedule. I've never known a writer who didn't write on a schedule who succeeded, who just said, I'm just going to let inspiration carry me where it will. I've never seen a writer succeed doing it that way. I'm not saying you couldn't, I've just never seen it. Every writer I know that succeeds has a discipline about them.
One of the things that I teach writers from the very beginning, writers who are starting out, and then and a lot of them won't do this, but the ones that do, not only do they become better writers, this will save their rear ends when they have a career, is I teach them the idea of a writer's schedule. So what that means is if you have a job that pays the bills, and Thursday at 3 o'clock, you have to do a marketing proposal to your boss. I know where you're gonna be Thursday at 3 o'clock. You're gonna be doing that proposal. And if you don't feel like it, and you don't feel like the proposal's that good, you're still gonna do the best you can. And if you feel like watching TV or napping, you're gonna be there, or you're not gonna have a job. And from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., you are supposed to meet with this client, you're going to do that. And you schedule your life around that. So what I tell people is no one is going to treat you like a professional until you are a professional. No one's going to invest money in you until you put the money where your mouth is. So you have a career, perhaps you have a family, perhaps you have all of these pulls on your time. I get that. Every Sunday night, you're going to create a writer's schedule for the next week. And maybe you can only write 45 minutes a day, ideally an hour or 2 hours. Let's say 90 minutes a day. You will block out that writing time, be it at 7:30 in the morning, be it at 6 o'clock, whatever it is, for every day for that week. Now, if you've blocked out Thursday from 7:30 to 8:30 is your writing time, I know where you're going to be at 7:30. You're going to be writing. And it's not, if you feel like it, because that's like your marketing meeting with your boss. So you schedule out your writing time every single week, and then you honor that. And if you're not willing to do that, and you're not willing to honor that, why should anyone else invest money in you?
I found, and this is still true for me, that I work best in the morning. And so I would get up and kind of, a lot of times what helps me is to exercise. And if I'm, either jogging in those days or now on an elliptical machine in the gym, that time and taking a shower and stuff is really productive for me to think about what I'm going to be doing that day with my writing, or to solve a writing problem I'm having, so that when I hit the desk, so to speak, I'm really hit it running, and I've got some momentum, and that worked for me. I also think I just enjoyed writing. I really wanted to achieve this goal really badly, and could see that others were achieving it. It wasn't like, I lived in Los Angeles, so I could see people around me who were breaking through, and I knew that it was possible, and so I just kept at it.
I come over to Janice's after work. She cooks dinner, we eat dinner, we talk about, right now we're in kind of a rewrite phase, so we're in a place where we're reconceptualizing some of the relationships. So we'll kind of have those kinds of discussions over dinner, and then we'll go downstairs and we'll look at the board, and that's more of a plotting, kind of figuring out how these new relationships are going to fit into our new plot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and it usually always involves chocolate in some kind of way. That's our muse.
Yeah.
Whether I'm a screenwriter or some other form of creative, I think one of the key disciplines is to understand that discipline is key. And that is to say, when you should find out what works best for you. Are you a morning person? Are you a late night writer? I'm not creative late at night. I like being up, but I'm not creative. I write like a fiend when I have that early morning coffee, because all night it's been percolating. For me, that's not true for everybody. But if that's who you are, then make damn certain you've gone to bed at a reasonable hour, and that you're up and you've gotten your stuff done, and now at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning or whatever it is, you've set aside and you've turned your phone off, and you have absolutely sort of put these soundproof walls around you, literally and figuratively, so that you have 2 to 3 hours of intensely productive time on a consistent daily basis. If you do that, because it's a game of inches, and if you do that, instead of being the person who's laboring over a script and rewriting it 3 years, nonstop, or you're doing a lot of first drafts and you're on your 12th script this year, those are not the indicators of success. But if you're someone who's got that kind of discipline and you say, how much can I improve this? We know that rewriting is writing, but up to a point, you know? So how many drafts, you know, if I can do this every day and then I set it aside, move on to the next one. I may come back to that with proper inspiration. But if you do that, what you can accomplish in a short 1 year period will put to shame most people who don't have that discipline, who don't know themselves and give themselves a framework to be productive.
You have to be disciplined. One of the great stories of discipline, perhaps the most disciplined writers I ever heard of, was a man named Stephen Cannell, passed away a few years ago, became incredibly successful. I mean, if you could get a show on TV, you're successful. If you get multiple series on TV, that's beyond successful. Stephen Cannell created or co-created 40 television series. 40. That's unbelievable. He wrote or co-wrote 450 episodes of television. I mean, just think about that. I know that just sounds like a large number, but if you write 15 scripts a year that get produced for 30 years, amazing. Stephen Cannell came and spoke to my students several years ago and said, I am severely dyslexic. I flunked out of the 3rd grade. I flunked out of the 8th grade. If I can make it, you can make it. But his key was, he said, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the most talented guy in the room. I'm the hardest working guy in the room. And when Cannell got out of college, he had a day job at his family's furniture business and then wrote from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday, put in a full day writing Saturday and a half day Sunday. He did this for 6 years until he got a job. And I'll never forget him saying, but the thing is, at the end of every year, when I looked back, I was that much better. And it was just awe-inspiring to hear him talk about that. And he had to keep practicing. There's a theory in general, not just about writing, but about any kind of pursuit, that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert at something. Tennis, piano, computer programming, writing. That's a long time. That's, you know, if you practice 20 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, that's 1,000 hours. So my 9 years probably was not too far off what that metric was for getting good at it.
So it is really difficult in the beginning, and a lot of writers have this fantasy or this illusion, and I did, and I was wrong, is that, you know, you're working and you're making money and you're trying to write and you're so busy and writing so hard and God, when you sell something and when you get hired, then you can quit your day job and you can quit this and you can just write, and oh, what a luxury that would be because you're so time starved. But when you first when I first broke in the business, you know, I had 2 months to write the script for Metropolis. But almost every day I had meetings and I had to go on meetings and I was talking about other projects and pitching, and I actually was spending more time on that than I was on my day job. So I actually had less time to write. And you were just pulled in so many directions, and so discipline really matters.
I didn't have TV. I had, it's really depressing. I had this season of The Office that I would watch over and over and over again. And so, like, I didn't really have anything to do except for sit there and write, which was by design. You know, I didn't get cable. I just wanted to work. And it was actually easier then to write than, say, you know, when you're happy with a girlfriend, and you know, it's like that's the hardest time for me to write, is when I'm, you know, happy and busy. When I just moved back from New York, and I love living in New York because there's so much to do. It's hard for me to write in New York because I'm always distracted by, you know, things that are going on outside, you know, or what's my roommate doing down there? You know, it sounds like he's having fun. Are you drinking beer? Let me have some beer. So, you know, sometimes that lonely time it's actually easier.
When I went to work with Michael McDowell on Beetlejuice, we had been working for a couple of weeks, and he sat down with me and he said, Larry, this is not working out. This is not happening. And I was taken aback, and I said, why? What do you mean? He said, because you're just sitting around waiting for inspiration. And I don't work like that. I'm not going to sit around waiting for you to be inspired. if you're going to work with me, and Michael was as professional writer as I had ever met. He had published, I don't know, 19, 20 novels, horror novels, great genre novels. He had written for a show called Tales from the Dark Side. He was the real deal. And not a not a person to hold back his feelings, okay. And again, he said to me, "This is just not happening." And he said, and this was the most, this changed my life as a writer. He said, "If you're going to work with me, look at it like we're working in a bank. We get in at 9, we have a cup of coffee, we say good morning, then we go to work, and we write until lunch. We go have our lunch. We come back, we write again till around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We fold up the writing, we return whatever phone calls, whatever business of writing we have to do. And we do this 5-6 days a week. And it's a job. It's not you sitting with a metaphorical beret in a metaphorical loft waiting for inspiration to strike. It's a job. And it was a bit of tough love, and it took me aback, and I was, I suppose, a tiny bit offended. But then the thing he said to me that sealed the deal, because when I was working at Paramount, I was writing script notes. Again, it was like a 16-hour day often, and probably 14 of those hours a day was writing script notes. And he said, "Larry, you've told me you've written hundreds of pages of notes for other people's scripts. Why can't you do it for yourself?" And I was like, wow, okay, I will try it your way. And it changed my perception of who a writer is, what a writer does, and it changed my work habits, and it changed everything. And I did it his way, and I took all of that, and he was absolutely right. All of that discipline that I'd put into other people's work, I started putting into my work, our work, and Beetlejuice came out of that. And as crazy and as far out as that movie is, the script was written in a very disciplined way, because that was the way Michael needed to work.
People always say, like, how can you be so disciplined to just sit in your office and write all the time? Well, I don't write all the time, for starters. But I always say, if I don't write, it doesn't happen. Not like going into an office and having a job and having specific tasks and things like that and having meetings set up for you. I mean, if you write, writing on a TV staff is a little different, but if you're basically writing, whether it's on spec or writing on assignment, and you're in your own space, you have to get the work done. You have to create, your schedule. So I find that when I'm on a tighter deadline, I write much more. I write much faster. I'm up earlier. I'm up later. A certain amount of adrenaline takes over, where you just get it done. If I'm not on an assignment, if I'm writing something for myself, or I've got a little time for something, or I'm preparing for a meeting that's a week away instead of tomorrow, I'll take a little bit more time. But basically every day, I'm always in work mode, and I'm always working on something, writing something, putting pitches together, working on rewriting. I always go back and rewrite old scripts that I think still have life in them, that we can maybe try to sell. As scripts have strange lives to them. They have 9 lives in some respects, because you can write something. I have scripts that I've written 10, even 15 years ago that didn't sell then, but suddenly there's a reason that something's out in the zeitgeist now, that if I just make some tweaks and sort of modernize it a little bit or update it, it may have a life to it. And I do that a lot. So when I have a little downtime, I always go back to the old scripts. But I've had a long stretch of pretty regular assignment work. So that has kind of kept me in a pretty dedicated and consistent work mode. But let's put it this way: I'm much happier and much saner when I'm writing a lot. And free time is fine, but I just enjoy having that project that I'm working on. So I try to write as much as I can. Whatever jobs I've had, I've been organized, and even in school I was organized. Not like fanatically, but I'm pretty good at sort of knowing how to sort of get things done in a quick way and not lose too much time. Prioritizing is very important, and because when you have a limited amount of time to get something done, you really have to kind of be careful that you're not getting lost in the minutia of things, and really stay focused on the bigger picture and the overarching story and the bigger structure of something than playing with every little word. You can get so, as a writer, you can get so lost in what somebody I know once very accurately called swirling the words, where you just, you get the script written and then you're spending all this time making every word perfect and, rearranging things, and we all want things to be as great and as what we consider perfect as possible. But then a movie gets made and there are millions of changes along the way, and tons of things are cut, and sometimes you know what's being done, sometimes you don't know what's being done. So you have to really over the course of time, I've learned to really manage the time I spend on things and not get too caught up in the minutia of things, which is kind of easy to do. But I'm pretty good at organization and getting things done, and I'm fairly quick. I can write fairly quick. I can rewrite fairly quickly. Over the course of time, I perseverate a lot less on a script or a story or a pitch. Like I said, I want it to be great, but I'm sort of good at letting things breathe and evolve a little bit more to get to the point that they need to be.
And I will say there is a collective consciousness of work focus. So if you have 4 or 5 people who are really writing in an environment, and they're screenwriters, and that that's what they're doing, you're gonna kind of feel compelled, I feel, or at least I did, I felt compelled to really write, and I'd say, okay, you need to do at least 10 pages a day, And 10 pages seems like a lot, but I would take the pressure off of myself by saying, they can suck, but you still need to do 10 pages a day. I'd say in my most prolific time, a writing day is literally getting up in a very disciplined way and writing for 4 or 5 hours or more straight. I would get up and consistently go to coffee shops and maybe show up around 10 or 11 a.m. and I'd start writing. I'd mess around on Facebook or whatever, and then after I'd procrastinated for 30 or 40 minutes, I'd be like, okay, you gotta get to it now. And so then I would write for about 4 or 5, 6 hours, maybe take a break, have some lunch, and then I'd write again until like late in the evening, and then I'd go to the gym, go home, and do it all over again. And there were like very specific coffee houses around LA, and there would just be the usual suspects. So you'd see other writers, screenwriters, you'd also see like maybe students, but mostly after a while you'd see the same kind of screenwriters. There was one guy who was a storyboard artist, and he was getting into the whole digital thing, and so he would be there every night doing his storyboard art digitally or whatever, and we'd all know each other. So we'd have to sometimes find different coffee shops because it would become slightly more social. It's like, okay, I don't want anyone to talk to me right now because I really just want to focus.
Well, writing, I think, is very different than being in the production side of it. Writing, I like to do a 9 to 5, like usually 11 to 8. Like I like to structure my days so that I'm writing it like an office job, which is kind of funny in a way because you kind of do this job because you don't like the office job. But I like that kind of structure because I like to be able to have an endpoint for relaxation. It doesn't always work that way. But like relaxation meaning like watching movies or just like thinking about something else other than the project, because I think that's so important just to stay like in life as well. So yeah, I'll get up and I'll sit in front of my computer not writing for a couple of hours, then write something maybe, then go make some lunch and come back and not write something for a while and then go back, and then it's just kind of start and stop like any job, and just do that consistently though, 5 days a week for sure.
Honestly, I think it's a double-edged sword because you can justify a lot of goofing off during the writing process as letting the creative juices flow and build and letting your mind wander a bit. The truth is story, not so much storytelling, but story creating happens in the subconscious. And sometimes if you just sit there and you stare at a computer screen or you stare at a blank piece of paper, waiting for words to come, it's a more forced artificial process, whereas, you know, sitting in a park, watching people interact, you might get an idea for something. So, on the other hand, you can waste way too much time doing that. So it's a double-edged sword, and you have to find a way to discipline yourself. And, you know, that's going to be different for everybody. The way I do it is to set myself a page quota. I have to write a certain number of pages each day. And if I've wasted time on the internet or in pointless Facebook debates, which seem to occupy an increasingly large amount of time, you know, I don't let myself get up. I don't let myself go to bed or whatever. I don't leave the computer until I've reached that quota. So that's really the only way for me that's really proven to be effective. Because otherwise, you know, I'll write one good little bit, and I'll be all proud of myself, and then I'll go do something else. And at the end of the day, I discovered that, well, that was a good bit, but it was only half a page, and now I have 10 pages to write tomorrow instead of 5. So keeping to a daily quota is really something that's been effective for me.
Most writers that I work with have a amount of pages per day they want to achieve. But I think that's like asking how you make love. I mean, as long as you get your pages in the day, I think there's one writer I worked with who told me, Peter, nobody in the world can work at this more than 2 hours a day. If they say they are, they're lying. But I don't think that's true. I know other writers I've worked with who literally crank out the chapters on a disciplined basis. We just did a book from an English woman who's a brilliant writer, but she's a financial analyst. She turned her book into the publisher on time, and the publisher was aghast. Like, we never have that. Well, it's just she's used to actually having to produce stuff on a schedule. I can't emphasize enough, though, that the discipline of a professional writer to go ahead and always fulfill the page count for the day it sounds mind-numbing. It sounds like working in a factory. I'm just observing those are the writers who succeed. I don't know why that is, but they are the writers who succeed. I have a deadline. I must produce. I'm producing it now. They all do that. Why is that? I don't know. Why do the ones that say, you know, I'm not inspired today, well, I'll just watch a movie, or I'll do something fun with research, and the inspiration will come. I don't know why those guys never finish their scripts. I don't know why. I'm not judging. I'm just observing who sells scripts and who doesn't. That's my observation.
I've said before that I do not believe in mornings because I've never seen one. My day actually, you know, it's like 10 o'clock when I'm drinking my first cup of coffee going, am I alive? And then probably in like the noon to 2 is when I start to do the writing thing. My thing is when I try to write 5 pages a day, 5 good pages a day. And some days those are short days because it just comes right out. And other days, it's like I'm taking a pair of pliers and pulling the words out one by one from my brain. And, you know, sometimes they're long days. One of my rules is not to reward myself for failure. And that means that if I don't make my 5 pages, I don't get to eat ice cream. I don't get my dessert. You know, those are rewards. I don't go see a movie if I don't get my 5 pages done. If I do, my old route in the Valley used to leave me at a coffee bean and tea leaf that's right across from the AMC Burbank. And so if I finished my 5 pages, I would walk across the street and see a movie as my reward. If I didn't do my 5 pages, I'd go home. And you know, I think sometimes people, this is a weird writer thing, is we get depressed if we fail. And then when we get depressed, we go for comfort food. I'm just gonna eat a gallon of ice cream. And that's the wrong message to send to yourself. Plus, eating a gallon of ice cream probably isn't good for you. But you know, the thing is, like, if I fail to make my 5 pages, I don't reward myself. When I was working in the warehouse, my thing was 1 page a day. And if I write If you write 1 page a day, every day, that's 3 spec scripts by the end of the year. So when people say, I've been working on this script for the past 5 years, I go, what are you doing, writing 5 words a day? You know, what is the, you know, you need to put in a little more effort there. The other thing is when you're writing professionally, there are deadlines, and some of them are crazy. So you have to be prepared to be able to write against a clock.
In a lot of ways, it's harder to write your own script because there's nobody providing parameters, guidelines. So, you know, you can do anything, and that means you have to control yourself. You have to narrow yourself down. Every day you have to be your own sort of critic, and that requires thinking in a lot of different ways. Whereas when you know you have an approved storyline and this is what they want, and you just have to deliver it, in some ways that's a lot easier because there are fewer decisions to make at every turn. On the other hand, that first script I had to write 200 miles per hour. From the day they gave me the assignment, it needed to be done in 10 days. So,
no
and I'd never written a feature script that quickly before. So that was an interesting challenge. I was basically chained to my computer 12 hours a day.
Clean house, and spring cleaning, and you know, reading books that have been on the shelf for years. It's like, I'm going to read this book. I've been planning to read it for 10 years. I'm going to read it now. And I'm like, really? Really? You need to be writing. What are you doing? But yeah, you do everything to get out of it. But once I'm in there, you know, that's the crazy part. It's like, once you're in there, you're in there. Just get in there. But that's easier said than done.
If you have certain scenes inside of you that you see visually that are sort of the tent poles for the story, by all means write those down and then write what works up to it and what springs off of them. But if you get to a certain place where you're only writing what you love, you're being a little undisciplined. You know, at that point you have to go, all right, I have to start writing the scenes that I don't know or don't love as well. Then start from the beginning and start moving toward those key scenes that you've already written. I do think that we all have little tricks that we play where we write only things that we love, you know, or that we're good at. You know, I've watched a lot of writers that will write scene after scene, and I'm like, yeah, I know you can do this, okay? Where's that scene that's really hard for you? Write that. So it's not a question of not being disciplined so much as, you know, not wanting to be taken to task for not being wonderful right away.
If you're your own boss, you have to be, you can be the nice boss, but you also have to be the mean boss. You have to be the boss that when you're slacking off, cracks the whip and says, you got to get back to work. And people, this is the fantasy that writers have, or you know, that non-writers have about writing, is that once I've quit my day job, I never have to deal with idiot bosses, producers. I never have to, you know, I can sleep as late as I want, which is fine as long as you get the work done. And I never have to actually like punch a time clock or anything like that. And you now have to punch your own time clock. You've got to manage your day so that you get work done. Because if you don't get the work done, you're going to end up at the end of your time going, I don't have a script to go out and the rent's due. You know, I've got to make some sale. I've got to do something. I've got to shake up. Usually, spec scripts shake up the world so you get meetings. And you know, if you got to get scripts done. You've got to be the mean boss.
The Cheers script that I wrote, the first one that was too dirty, that according to the agent there, actually I got the idea for this script because I was being an absolute pain in the neck to my wife. Because I was unemployed and we just had a baby and I thought I was a failure and I wasn't supporting my family. And we're actually having an argument about this at 11 o'clock at night where she says, you've got this free time, why don't you write something now? And she said, why don't you rewrite your feature script? I said, well, I'm not ready to do that. She said, well, then write a Cheers episode. I said, well, I would, but I haven't had any ideas. Wait, I just got an idea. It was bizarre. In the middle of an argument, I went over, my desk was in our bedroom at that time, it was a table. A kitchen table that was in our bedroom, and I wrote notes and said, okay, I'll do this starting tomorrow. And I wrote the script in a week and then called up the agent and said, okay, I've written another script. And it really got my agent interested in representing me, even though he had reservations about that particular script. He clearly said, this guy can write comedy. So that's what I did when I was unemployed. I would write. It was too difficult to write with a family and a 12-hour-a-day job, but it was a job that had periods of unemployment, and so I tried not to be lazy during those times.
The morning's good. You wake up, you do have less things going on in the morning. Nighttime, I used to really be able to get into a place at night, but I think it's mostly worrying about getting up in the morning that keeps me from writing late into the night as much as I used to. More and more, I think I'm getting into a place where with practice, you get to a place where you can just kind of dive in from almost anywhere. I mean, I can pretty much write on the train. If I can get a seat, I can.
Sure.
I can't write when I'm driving, so that's annoying, but I can kind of curl up anywhere and get a few words out.
You can't write and drive? I know. It's funny because I'll have like a pad in the passenger side, and like I keep a pen. I keep pads and pens like hidden all over the house and anywhere. And there are times when like something will hit me and I'm just like, okay. Sometimes I can read it, sometimes I can't.
The writing though, I mean, that's the beauty of the laptop. You can go anywhere. So if you're trying to write quickly and trying not to think too much, I do need a quiet space. I can't write at Starbucks. I can't do that whole LA thing. There's too much going on. But if I get hired to edit, and I have downtime in the editing room where it's just me. So it's just like I crack at that laptop and I can just shoot through it. Again, go fast. It's harder to find time to edit what I've written and reread it and rewrite it because that requires more focus than just being in the moment and kind of shooting through it that way.
I feel more inspired when the world is quiet and the phones aren't ringing and Twitter's not going off or the cell phone isn't going off, and I can kind of let my imagination just run where it wants to go because there's nothing distracting. And I feel like even in the work that I do as a journalist, that's when I get my inspiration. I'm a little bit more relaxed, and I'm actually not as self-conscious at night as I am in the day. Something about the lights being on and the light being up makes me a little more like, this has to be this way, and I think I can play in my mind at night better.
Now, I have a follow-up question to that because I know that Janice is somebody who will say, oh, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to set my alarm for like 2 or 3 a.m. and I'm going to get up and I'm going to work. So when you say you work better at night, is it you stay awake all through the day and then at night you find that place, or are you talking about when you've gotten up basically still in the middle of the night?
Yeah, when I've gotten up in the middle of the night. So like I'll set my alarm for like 2 or 3 o'clock and I'll get up, and usually like I'll have a shower so I'm feeling kind of relaxed and comfortable. And I think when the shower starts, I work well by water or with water. I get inspired because I'm not really thinking about what I'm supposed to be writing, but the characters start coming alive to me, and then because I do keep a pad in my bathroom just in case I need to write, and then I go downstairs or go in my bedroom or stay in my bedroom and just kind of write things out and kind of freehand things. So yeah, I think being in an atmosphere where I don't feel like I have to write at a desk or at a computer. I free write a lot by hand. So, and then I take that and then put it on the computer. So
yeah, so in that way we're actually pretty similar because it's almost like you're a morning writer. It's just that
it's dark.
It's dark.
It's still dark.
because I'm the same way. I get up in the morning, and although I don't shower or do anything, I am of the Edith Wharton school where I just kind of stay in bed, open my laptop, and then just start working, because the minute I go outside and see like that the sink is full of dishes, I'm like, maybe I'll do a few dishes or something like that. But if you just like kind of stay in squalor, ensconced in your bed, you can get a fair amount done before you have to really face the world.
I have a trick. If we have a deadline, I generally just use the "you're faster," which I think I read once that's what I could be wrong, but I think that Ethan Cohn is the faster typer, so he has to do a lot of the type. That's what I've read. Anyway, but he's like a magician. So if there's a deadline, I usually use that, and he's completely onto it. So he'll generally push back or be like, "No, it's all you this time." So it's a trick that I use too many times, but I'll still pull it out every now and then.
When you're dealing with a cable company like HBO or Showtime or Cinemax or USA Network or Lifetime or Sci-Fi Channel, they have a big board that shows you what movies are playing on their, for each. These days, I guess you probably know about TV movies from Sci-Fi Channel and Sharknado, so it's like when they scheduled Sharknado 2, they put it on the board for it's going to show this night at this time. And I had a movie on it wasn't my movie. There was a movie on USA Network that was on their big board that fell apart. And so I got a call from a producer who said they had a movie that fell out at the last moment. We need to make the movie for them. What are we going to make? And so I went in and pitched ideas to them, and they had a location. That was the interesting thing, is they had a location called the Orcutt Ranch in the Valley, which is a gigantic orange orchard with a hacienda on it and all kinds of cool stuff. It's a city, city owns it, and they rent it out for basically weddings. And so I toured the property, went back, pitched 3 or 4 ideas. They picked one, and after they picked the idea, they said, "You have 12 days to turn in your first draft, and here's the catch. The first draft is going out to talent. So the actors were going to try to get to take reduced wages on this film, not what they get paid, but less than that, are going to be reading your 12-day first draft." And I said, okay. And I wrote the script in 10 days, had 2 days left over to do a rewrite. And that's my suggestion for anyone working on an insane deadline, is always leave 2 days to do a rewrite, no matter what the insane deadline is, because those 2 days, I made that script 1,000,000 times better than the first draft. And it went out. They cast a Oscar-nominated actress in the female lead to work way below her rate, and that it ended up being cool. The other one was even worse. Was a Roger Corman movie I did about robot hookers from outer space, and I had 9 days to write it. The film was shot in 9 days, and it played on Showtime for 9 days. Corman had a deal with Showtime at the time. Played on Showtime for 9 days. So it was 9 days to write, 9 days to shoot, 9 days on Showtime. Then it was out of there.
We stop when we're on deadline.
Yeah. There's always that point, like before we have to turn it in, there's like, okay, and then you just back engineer it. You're like, okay, here's where we're going to have to turn it in. So here's where we're going to have to send it to my mom to spell check. No,
or somebody.
I'm kind of kidding.
Whose deadline? Yeah, by the way, who is looking at it?
Well, the deadline that we're looking at right now is a Dream Ago deadline.
From a screenwriting standpoint, though, for us, it does tend to be we have been pretty much all 3 years we've been working on it on deadline for something, either a competition or our producing partner has a deadline where he would like to see a certain thing done. So we've tended to write to deadline most.
Yeah, you don't always know you're writing to deadline at the beginning. You're like, oh, we have so much time, we're just writing. And then the deadline gets closer and closer and you're writing to deadline.
When there's a deadline, it's a lot easier to force yourself to just stay there. You know how many pages you have to write on average each day to be finished by the date they set for you. And if you're not making that quota, you're screwing up, and someday you're going to be up 24 hours straight trying to make up for it. So it's when you've got a deadline, it's a lot easier to discipline yourself. At the same time, in my experience, screenwriting is 80% surfing the web, doing dishes, walking the dog, all the while hopefully you're thinking about what you're going to be writing, and then 20% of the time you're actually typing away.
What I learned is that when you have an insane deadline like that and you write fast, you cut through to your subconscious completely. It's a direct line. Instead of your brain going, well, I don't know if that seems too personal. All of those blocks that you usually put between you and writing can't be there. You now have to produce pages. And so you end up writing a more personal script, a script that gets right into the icky stuff inside of us we don't want to deal with, because you don't have time to put up the walls. There's just no time for the walls. So you write fast, you come up with, I think, a better script.
If I have a deadline and I know when something has to be done and it's a paying job, I'm a pretty harsh taskmaster. When I'm writing a spec script for myself, I tend to go a bit easier on myself on the theory that creativity is what's most important here. I'm not on deadline and I don't need to meet somebody else's schedule, and I should just let it flow. But again, that's really just self-justification, and there's a huge amount, I think there's a huge amount of laziness involved in being a screenwriter, to be honest with you.
It really depends on the writer. So there isn't one set course that you're supposed to follow, but it really is about doing the work and then getting the work out there. Sometimes you'll work on a script and you'll say, you know what, I've worked on this for 8 months, I've tackled it every which way, it's not happening. So it's also knowing when to let something go, not for all eternity, but potentially to come back to it later when you've had a stroke of genius that informs you how to take the work, how to make it better. But the point with having those broad goals is to just do the work and get it out there, rather than spend years and years and years tinkering with one screenplay that then you're at the risk of, after 3 years, and I just went through this with a writer, tinkering with the same script for 3 years and then going, oh, it's not good enough. It'll never be good enough. I'm not going to get it out there. And then starting another script and spending another 2 years on something and then going, oh, but it's still not good enough. I'm not going to get this out there. That is the challenge that we run into that. So because of that, you really want to expose the work early and often. So that means from concept, you want to run the concept by people in the know, whether they're members of your writers group or in a class or whatever it is. Have people look at your outline. Really don't be afraid to expose the work, to get feedback, to have questions asked. I was just sitting with a writer of mine who had written a script, a feature script, with the guidance of his manager. And they had been on the script for 1.5 years. And then he gave the script to a few writer friends. And he got some massive notes back. And what he said to me is, if only we'd given it out on outline, which is what we all were pushing him to do. But he felt loyal to the manager. He didn't want to expose it. And I understand the choice that he made. It was in a tough spot. Do you listen? Do you serve the one master? Or do you open yourself up? I generally prefer to expose work early and often because I think it just saves you a lot of time in the end.
When I wrote my book, when I had trimmed it down nice and tight, and I thought I really had it ready to go, I had 120, 130,000 words in the manuscript. And I called him up and said, okay, I'm ready to go. I've done my cutting and I've done my, here it is, 130,000 words. And he laughed. Publisher laughed and said, no, Eric, we don't publish anything over 70,000 words. And it was like this bolt of horror that hit me. I said, wait a minute. Are you actually telling me that I now have to cut my book in half? And he said, yeah, I'm afraid I am. So for 3 or 4 days, I was just practically in a coma. It was, any writer, you're appalled by what they make you to do to your babies. And then I got some help. I had somebody else, a dear friend who was good with editing, take a look at it. And I seriously cut into it one more time for editing. I got it down to 82,000 words. Not quite their 70,000, but I cut it by 45% of the book that I thought was absolutely necessary was gone. And the book was better for it. It was such a better book. It was clearer and it was cleaner and there were so many swamps removed from it. It was an interesting experience, but I did not realize, you have to re-objectify. I didn't realize how much work there was yet to be done. So, writing is word choices, and a process of re-objectification. That's something critical too, which means writers never write alone, never. But we spend a lot of time alone in the writing process. But once we have something, then we have to, and this is important to new writers everywhere, you have to have a circle of people whose opinion of material you trust. It's one of the things that happens in our program. These people make friends for life because then they rely on each other's judgment, because everybody knows everybody's opinion grows to become quite sophisticated about the material. And you can always call up one of your buddies and say, you want to do a script swap. You know, you read mine, I read yours. And what you get back frequently is not what you want to hear. We're all children, you know, we all want to say, oh, that is the greatest thing, isn't that great? And that's never what you hear, so you're always eternally disappointed. So you hear objective, good criticism of what you've got. And I always tell them 48 hours. Don't do anything for 48 hours. Suffer, fine, stay in bed, whatever you need to do in response to what you've heard about your material. And then sit down and read it again, cover to cover. And it will be revealed to you through someone else's point of view what you really have. And all of a sudden it's time to start editing again and rewriting again. You will get it. And that is, what has happened there is the cycle of subjective work to re-objectification. Because the more you work on something over time, the more you are in it. You are drawn into it, and it becomes within you, and it is about you, and you think you're doing something great. And then you take it out, and you get a slap in the face or two. It clears your eyes, it clears your vision very, very well. You become re-objectified, and you approach the material again with clean eyes for another go-round. And in my experience, if you really want good material, and I'm assuming we all do, there's some who just want pats on the head and all kind of stuff, but if you really want the material to be good, you have to go through that cycle. Subjectivity, re-objectification. Subjectivity, 4, 5, maybe 6 times. Then each time, you know, it gets better, and it gets a little better, and it gets a little better. And you don't want to send anything out. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is sending out material before it's finished.
As all the storytellers and all the artists out there know, especially in LA, there's this really weird push and pull between your own intuition and then also this other thing of like feedback. You know, people will tell you that won't sell, or that doesn't translate, or these are the rules, or you don't do that. I think my initial kind of primal intuition has always been a little bit more rebellious. I don't like authority. I don't like being told you can't do this. I've always been interested in some things that are like left of center, per se. So I think, you know, my intuition, you know, has been challenged so many times because people will come and say, well, that doesn't really work, you know, or that is kind of not how you do it. So it's been kind of an interesting journey or a struggle, because I do think that somewhere along the way, because filmmaking is a collaborative process and you have to like open yourself up to suggestions and different perspectives, but at the same time, I do think that storytellers and artists and filmmakers or whoever, actors, writers, you have to open up the windows a little bit for perspective and feedback, but you also have to be really mindful of what your internal kind of voice is. And so to answer your question, sometimes I feel like I'm really good with my instincts, and sometimes I'm really proud of it. And sometimes I don't know, because I haven't been able to test a lot of things in the marketplace, you know? I mean, you and I, off camera, we talked a little bit about David Lynch and how, you know, I mean, I'm a big fan of his work. And this is a guy whose work is so specific, and I'm such a fan of his work, you know? but he's been proven in the marketplace, and so people have an understanding that that's his signature, you know? So people will leave him alone. You can do whatever you want because there's a fan base there, you know? But I think when you're, you know, just sort of emerging in the marketplace and you're trying to figure out what your voice is, what kind of stories are interesting to you, and you don't have all the money and all the access to people who can help you make that vision come to life, then you start to make little compromises along the way, you know? And then somewhere along the way, the magic of collaborating happens, where your movie can become better than you expected, but also somewhere along the way, you might start to like lose a sense of your own voice because you don't know whether you got a chance to really experiment with that. Does that make sense? You know, I mean, it's kind of a long answer to your question,
No.
but I guess to answer your question, I think it's an ongoing thing that happens with storytellers.
They didn't respond to the writing as much as they wanted to. They really expected the pat on the back and being told how great it was, and chances are it wasn't as good. So really it's up to you. It depends on how thick your skin is. It's about how much you want this and how much you're conscious enough to understand that feedback is important and that you should take it as it is. You should look at it as constructive criticism, and pay attention to it and rewrite and make it better. It's all about making it better, and you really got to know how to do it. It's a big part of the Hollywood job, you know, as a screenwriter. I mean, you know, I've never heard of something being just first draft. You know, it's always draft. I mean, you know, 30 drafts, 40 drafts. You know, so they're constantly, and you got to be able to do that. If you're the type of writer who does not like to be told that something is wrong and wants to say, no, this is the way it is, it's my art, and that's the way it is, you shouldn't be writing screenplays. You should be writing novels or plays. That's really the only two professions where the writer is king, really, unless you're doing television. I guess television, the writer is king there. But mostly novelists and playwrights where, yeah, the editor can tell you something is not working and you can take it or leave it, but it's really you have the final say on it. Then you should do that. But, you know, I think people who have thin skins or are very sensitive about creative feedback should not be screenwriters. I mean, they're in for a really, you know, very frustrating experience if that's the case.
When should a writer give up on a screenplay? That is such a good question, because I'm not sure you should ever give up on a screenplay, but at the same time, there's the point where you should shelve it for a while until you figure out what's wrong with it. And I have a bunch of scripts that in fact, the spec script that I'm working on now is a script that got shelved because I couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't working, and I put it on the shelf and went on to do other things. I do this thing called cross-training, because when I'm not writing one thing, I'm writing something else. So often, if I take the screenplay that I can't figure out the answers to, put it on the shelf, and write some other things, I will then learn something that helps me solve the problems with that screenplay. And so it's like I have scripts that have been on the shelf forever because I still haven't figured it out. Other scripts that go on the shelf, I write a couple of scripts and I figure out what the problem is. But giving up on a screenplay, I don't know, to me, there's always something of me in every screenplay. So it's you know, do I want to give up on my arm? No, it's like, you know, it's still my arm. I want to go back and figure out what's going on with my arm and make it work again. This gets to Roman Polanski's The Tenet. What right does my head have to call itself me? But yeah, I don't think you should ever give up on a screenplay. You should shelve it though for a while and go on to something else. I think too often people don't put their script aside, and so what they're doing is they don't know the solution to the problem, and they often just make it worse by rewriting and rewriting without knowing how to get out of it, not knowing the solution to the problem. Where if you put it aside, it allows you fresh eyes, your mind goes off. If you're trying to remember a line to some movie, the best way to remember it is try not to remember it. So, you know, trivia. So if you're trying to figure out the solution to a screenplay problem, the best thing to do is not try to figure out how to solve it, but go on to something else, and then you'll figure out the solution sometime. And you know, the script I'm working on right now was a script that was originally designed as a movie for Orion Pictures. I had a producer who had to deal with Orion Pictures. I had this script that I pitched that he said would go to treatment, went to treatment on the script, And then Orion Pictures went bankrupt, the story of my life. And the script now, the producer said, well, we can't do it for that budget, but we can do it on a smaller budget. So now take this script that was a big script and turn it into a small script, and it didn't work that way. So the film never got made. I bought the rights back, and it's been sitting on my shelf as I've been waiting to figure out how to turn it now, in today's world, into a movie that's the bigger budget version. And it's like a North by Northwest chase movie, which at some point in time got shrunk down to no chase. And it just did not work. But that, trying to figure out the solution to that problem took me a while. So it took me a decade of not thinking about it.
Writing is hard. Creating is hard. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the biggest procrastinator there is. Every writer will relate to the experience of, trying to do anything else but write. The whole thing about sharpening your pencils and doing your laundry and cleaning your house and, answering emails or playing solitaire. On one hand, it's something that's advised because there is that whole thing about the creative process where, we're talking the gestation period where you're supposed to think about your problem, your creative problem, and then kind of ignore it and do something else that's unrelated that helps creatively. So people think, okay, that means procrastination, you could do other things. And there is some truth to it. The problem is if you're constantly afraid to write and so you're trying to do other things, then you'll never write because you're just constantly procrastinating. So there's got to be a point where you got to put that aside and actually write. So you got to get over it. And there's plenty, online there's tons of advice about procrastination and how to avoid it, because it's not just for writing, it's for everybody. Everybody procrastinates. Anything that's worthwhile to do and it's scary to do, people will procrastinate. Block just really means you're not writing. It just means the words are not coming up, and the words are not coming up because fear is creating a tension that prevents you from writing. That's what it is. So, it's like saying, a plumber doesn't have plumber's block, right? They just go to do their job. It's about doing your job, showing up at your job. You have to understand that writing is a job. Whether you get paid or not, you got to show up to your desk and you got to put your butt on the chair and you got to type words, so that's what it is. And so we use that as an excuse. We say, well, it really is fear of writing, fear of whatever, all those procrastinating things I've said, but it doesn't sound to say, oh, I'm afraid. It sounds a lot better to say I'm blocked, because then people can go, oh, poor you. Oh yeah, you're an artist. Right. So it sounds better, but it's really, it's just fear, and again, there's plenty of material out there about how to overcome those fears. So it's all psychological stuff. You just have to overcome.
I will never go back to the beginning because that is a death trap. I know what I'll do. I'll go back and rewrite the first 60 pages, and then I'll go back and rewrite the first 60 pages again and again. I'll go back and read a couple of pages and maybe do some cosmetic stuff just to get, just to put myself back into the zone of the story. And then I just start writing, and they may not be good ideas. There may be, my drafts are always 20, 30 pages too long when I finish the first draft, because I'm telling the story to myself. But I forget who it was. I'm going to say Oscar Wilde. I'm going to say some famous writer said, just sit down and start typing your name over and over. Oscar Wilde may have been pre-typewriter, I bet, but you understand the point. Start typing your name. Start doing anything with your fingers. And again, it's like where that comes from and where that next scene comes from, it's there. It is there. And if you put yourself in a position to find it, you will find it. And I might spend a day writing 10 basically bad pages, but there'll be one page of truth in it and one moment that will move the story forward. And Stephen King talks about this really brilliantly. And I have questions about outlining, and I'm not here to have an outline debate. He's scathing about outlining. If you've ever read his book on writing, great, probably the best book on writing ever written to my mind. But he always says it's what happens next. It's what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. And, you know, if I were to reach across the room here and steal your notes from you, there would be a response.
Yes.
Or if I were to kick the camera over and say, I'm done with this interview, there would be a response, right? And then it's what happens next. Do you jump on me and say, give me my notes back, you jerk? Do you, I mean, and it's really that, it's kind of gets, and if you just look at it like that, and you look at it like whatever you made happen, something has to happen next, and it's what happens next, what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. That what happens next will come, and it may not come easily, and there may be a lot of, like I said, bad what happens next before you find the right what happens next, but it'll come, and it's a magical process. I mean, magical in the sense that it's almost unexplainable, and it's why there's so many screenwriting programs and apps and all of these things out there to kind of tell you that they can tell you what happens next, but they can't tell you what happens next. Only you can tell you what happens next. And I look at it as a moment-by-moment process. And I put these characters in a situation, and it's often diabolical and it's often otherworldly, and they've got to get themselves either deeper into it or get the hell out of it. And that's the journey, and it's moment by moment, and it's sort of literally second by second if you think about it. You know, movies move forward in a linear fashion.
If you're not on a schedule, or you're not on a timetable, or you're not watching the clock, it's very easy to get lost. Now, by the same token, I'm a big believer in, like, sometimes you just have to just write stuff out and just you know, have it in your head and just get it down on the page and not edit yourself, just sort of, you know, like blow it out. And I think sometimes that's very helpful to get to the essence, to find the essence of what you're really trying to do. But I think, you know, I think it comes just with experience, frankly. I think it's really just the more things you've written and the more ways you understand how to best tell and structure a story so that it'll be the most effective, that it'll hit the marks that somebody's hiring you is looking for. You know, if you're working for a film company or a network or a producer who has certain paradigms, mandates, things that work best for them, you know, you focus on those things because there's just some when you're writing for other people, sometimes there's just so much you can of yourself that can be in that script. You know, you're trying to fill a number of boxes. And it's a little different than just writing something on spec or like writing a stage play, which is for you. So you learn how to adjust the amount of time you spend on things, what you focus on, what is important, what's probably less important, what's going to change, what's probably not going to change, because we have a finite amount of time to do things.
Barrington's got the energy of that little bunny with the batteries.
I've pretty good, like, you know, once I'm on task, I have a certain amount of persistence for that. And I think you don't really know what's slowing you down. Sometimes I'm sure it works both ways. I think, you know, sometimes Janice we'll be working on something that maybe feels like it's a little bit off topic or something, and I tend to, you know, and I'm always trying to like pare away and like, you know, I have less patience for that kind of thing. Because I'm like, I want to be writing. And so like, I'm tired of talking about things. I want to be writing. But she's like, but wait, I need to tell you this. And also it made me think about this. And I'm like, it's too much. But then when you get to the page, you never know what you might need, you know? And that's, and so sometimes like things that I was impatient in the moment about, I'm like, oh, that little detail is totally going to make it. So, and you don't know how long it would have taken you to come up with that if you hadn't, you know, taken the time to do that groundwork. So, Yeah. So it's just a time-consuming process. Writing a screenplay is a time-consuming process.
I think the best part of writing a script is when you've actually written enough of the beginning, the middle, and the end that you have visualized the whole entire puzzle in a certain way. So now you're just along for the ride, and it's not like painful and hard and trying to figure anything out. You figured it out. Now it's just like, I'm gonna sit down and write this scene, or I'm gonna put that scene, I'm gonna put this scene here, I'm gonna put this scene here, because I think of screenwriting like a puzzle. I very rarely write in chronological order. I will literally write a scene that I know is gonna be in the movie. I might write the ending. I mean, I literally, and then I'll start moving, oh no, this scene goes here, this scene goes here. Now some people do that with index cards. Like they'll put the thing together with index cards. I just do it in the script. I just cut and paste and put that scene there, and I'll like write a scene and then just go more, knowing that I'm gonna write more scenes there, but knowing that I needed to write that scene. So I think once you have actually, I guess, it's a confidence thing. Once you're confident that you know the story and the characters and they're going to, you know, it's like, hey, I can see Vegas. We're gonna get there. It's right there. I see the lights and everything.
I'm in Barstow.
Right? I'm in, right there it is, right? That's like the most exciting part. There's a little bittersweet thing. It's great to finish. Like, yes, of course you love to finish, but there's a little bittersweet thing to finishing. It's sort of like finishing a good book. You're like, oh my God, it's over.
Right.
Now what am I gonna do? Okay. Is there more than, no, it's over.
It's over, right,
like it's done. So there's a little bit of something that, you know, and I think people feel that when they read a really good book, and they're just like, wow, I'm not gonna see those characters again, and that was amazing, but it's done.
I think the work that scares people, it depends, but often I see it in sort of the rewrite process, where you have spit out that first draft, where you have written the scenes that you love, and then there's this, you know, a problem area that you have to tackle, and first of all, figuring out how to fix it, that's hard, but even when you know how to fix it, sometimes it's not what you want to do, but you have to. That is the place where it's hardest, I think. But once you get through that, I think that it's probably the most rewarding because you really did the hard work.
You wake up on Monday morning with your cup of coffee and you've gone to work and you have no idea what needs to happen next in your script. Well, a story I tell about this almost always in my classes was from Beetlejuice, where there's a scene that a lot of people love, actually. It's become, like a lot of people, one of their favorite scenes. And the ghost, Barbara and Adam, Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, they've died, they've driven off a bridge, trying to avoid a dog. Aren't they good people? They tried to avoid the doggy and they've driven off a bridge and they've drowned. And they're trapped in their house now as ghosts. And they've been given a book about the handbook for the recently deceased, that they can't figure it out. And they want to go into the afterlife and ask questions about how to be ghosts and how they're supposed to live, you know, live as ghosts, die as ghosts, whatever. But what Michael, my writing partner Michael McDowell and I had done is we had trapped them so well in their house, we had no idea how to get them into the afterlife. We had done a very good job of sticking them there with what felt like no exit. And we had to come up with a way for them to get out of the house. And the dynamic between, you got to understand, Michael was, I'm going to say Harvard educated, if not Harvard, some incredibly prestigious university. I grew up in a trailer park and barely got out of high school. Okay, there was sometimes it was usually playful, but sort of a status issue between us, and the way we'd often work is that I would like vomit out ideas and he would just start shooting them down, and it was always one word: no, no, no. No. And we were trying to come up with a way to get them out of the house, Barbara and Adam, the ghosts, get them into the afterlife. And I was coming up with more and more convoluted ideas about how to get them out of the house. And I'm sure trying to bring out my supernatural chops and all that I knew about, you know, metaphysics and blah-de-blah, just to get them out of the house. And every idea I came up with, no, no, no. And my ideas kept getting further and further out and more convoluted. No, no, no. And I finally got really angry with Michael. And I said, Michael, what do you want them to do? Draw an effing door? And I just said it because I thought it was the stupidest idea imaginable. And I was so mad. I said, is that what you want? You want them to draw a door? And he just started laughing, and I started laughing, and we said, yes, that's exactly what they should do, is draw a door. So rather than these incredibly, like this convoluted supernatural nonsense, Adam found a piece of chalk, drew a doorknob, opened it, and went into the afterlife. Simple. But it took all of that convoluted stuff to get there. And that's what will happen when you sit down and you're stuck. You will write and write and write, and you won't think you found it, and you'll know you haven't found it. But if you keep at it and you'll keep writing, there'll finally be that epiphanal moment where you'll go, oh, that's what happens next. And then you will write that, and you will have moved your characters forward one more step in your story, and then the next what happens next is in front of your eyes, and you move forward like that. And sometimes it's literally moving an inch or less than an inch at a time. And sometimes it's running, sometimes it's crawling, sometimes the what happens next happen really quickly, and you have a day where you just go, oh my God, you know, I just wrote 10 great pages, and all they need is just a little sprucing up, and they're there. And some days you will write 10 pages and you will have maybe a quarter of a page is usable, but you will have moved the story forward that much. And it's a kind of alchemy, a kind of a magic of creation, but it's such a beautiful feeling. It's the best job in the world.
Ah, you're talking about the vomit draft, aren't you, right? We have such nice expressions for it. Yes, I do. And I urge my students not to look back. That's where the perfection starts to come in, and they stop up their writing process, and they have these beautiful first acts, and then they never go any further. So yes, by all means, write to the end. And then you can go back in, and you can start honing it and chiseling away at it, or fattening it up, make it better, but right to the end. Barrel forward. I think so many people make the mistake of going back and rereading what they wrote the day before, polishing that up, and only moving this much further. We don't have enough time. You know, we only set so much writing time in the day. You've got to make as much use of that as you can. Press forward. I think that time frame is personal. It really depends on where you fit it in your life. You know, I've made my whole philosophy of teaching is writing in 10-minute increments, because of being a busy person myself and knowing that my writers are busy. So I do believe that whatever time you have, you can make the best use of it as long as you focus.
And I make the statistic up depending on how I'm feeling the room. I will say 98% of you will fail, and people go, oh! Right. And I say you'll fail because you'll never finish. You will never finish your script. And it's sad but true. I'm not wrong. I'm pretty darn close, and I've taught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students at this point. And not finishing is exactly what most people will do. I've just been teaching a workshop where I've given people 12 weeks to finish a draft that they've been working on for a long time, and the dropout rate is enormous. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly what you said. This is perfectionism, and this is not allowing yourself the ability to fail. And it's a huge mistake.
I was the editor-in-chief of my college newspaper, and there's a big sign in the newspaper office underneath this huge clock that had like a blood-red second hand, and the sign said, "This is a daily, not a weekly." And whenever we were there past midnight, the managing editor would put up another sign that would say, "Don't get it right, get it written." And I would say the same thing to people starting out writing and to people who've been writing all their lives.